Okay, Jason, I'm so glad that you are joining us today. And as we're getting started and waiting for our Family Search friends to join our live stream, which we do every Wednesday on Facebook and YouTube, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do?
Sure. Well, I currently manage two teams at the Family History Library, the U.S. and Canada Research Specialist team, which is composed of 5 staff members. And then I also manage the VIP Hosting and Research Services team, and we have 4 dedicated members on that team. But in truth, we rely a lot upon all the research specialists at the library for what we do, and even members of the department. So
Well,
I have one of the best jobs.
that's why we're talking to you today. And where are you joining from? Where are you quarantining?
I am quarantining in my home here in Ogden. I live up north of the library. Yeah.
So you're in Utah. I'm
Mhm.
I'm downtown, and we have oh my goodness, someone is saying Kylie. Hi Kylie in Australia, and we've got people. We love to hear where you're joining from. New York and Apple Valley, California. I've been there, and Calgary and Columbia. You guys, this is so fun to have you. And so today, Jason is going to talk a little bit about his job. And I think we want to really focus on your experience. Did you call it VIP hosting?
Yeah, VIP hosting and research services. So we are responsible for taking care of kind of VIP guests that actually come on site to the library, and kind of ensuring that they have a great experience when they come. And then we also support senior church leaders and department leaders with various research projects that are needed as they relate to family history.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And so, hello, we want to say hello to everyone. We've got Oregon and New Zealand and Jersey Shore. Jason, tell us, before we start talking about the VIP experience or some of your stories, tell us what is the status of the reopening of the library?
Yes. Okay. So that is the biggest question that many people have, including myself and those on my teams.
You don't know.
So the last messaging that went out was on July 20th. The Family History Library staff and management are monitoring the direction that we're receiving from both state and local government leaders in regards to the pandemic. They're wanting to be very cautious. Obviously, a good majority of our patronage falls into that higher risk category, including many of our volunteers and staff. So I know that a lot of precautions are being looked at this time on ways that we could reopen in the future, and what that's going to look like, and how we implement various measures to keep everyone safe. At this time, there hasn't been any specific reopening date given, but I know myself and many of my staff included hope that it's sooner rather than later. We're eager to get back into the library to get access to the resources. We're well aware that there's many of our resources that can't be accessed online at this point. And there are folks that rely heavily, whether it's professional researchers or just local community, on those records. So we're hoping to make those available soon. We have taken measures to provide a way for folks to get access to our staff. For the last month or so, we have been doing online virtual consultations. And this applies not only to kind of US and Canada, but various areas throughout the world. Our staff are making themselves available. Anybody can come free of charge, sign up for a consultation, a 20-minute consultation, and can ask their questions, and we can provide guidance and assistance. So you still have access to the staff and can interact with them. We also have our great Family Search community pages where you can go and benefit from the wealth of knowledge that's contained within our community environment, and ask your questions as well. So we're hopeful that that is helping those that are struggling this time, but we know that what people really want are the records, and we hope that's going to be sooner rather than later.
And the expertise. So I appreciate you sharing what people can do that are looking for help. And our moderators will make sure and put that information in the chat. We had Jeffrey on about a month ago, and he talked about it, and David Rencher came on and shared some of the changes to the library. So those of you that love the library, like all of us, you can see more information there. So follow the Family History Library Facebook page and this, Family Search's Facebook page, and that's where we will post updates, or we have a press page on FamilySearch.org. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think it's important before we talk about some of these VIPs. What are your thoughts about VIP? Like, who's a VIP? Who's qualified?
That's a really good question. My team specifically focuses on supporting the senior church leadership, the church hosting, the department leaders, and others for guests that are in town. We also support community leaders to arrange for an experience when they come in, but really anybody that walks through the doors of the Family History Library is a VIP. Many of the same things that we provide, whether that be an overview of the library, an introduction to Family Search, or to the collection, those are all things that any guest that walks in the library can get. We may spend time, taking our guests on a tour, and we can show people around the library. It doesn't have to be something that's scheduled and that's formal. We can show you where the books are, where the films are, and get you acquainted that way.
So kind of anybody's a VIP, but
anybody's a VIP. I mean, we provide one-on-one research assistance to these guests when they come in, but any guest who walks in can get one-on-one help and assistance. So there really isn't anything special per se that these VIP guests that we work with get versus anybody that walks through the doors.
Oh, that's so good to know.
It's just a scheduled visit versus an unscheduled visit.
And sometimes because of like who they are, there's protocol or security or things. So,
sure.
I think that's good information. So everyone's a VIP. So everyone who's watching, you guys can all have the kind of a similar experience. But let's go into some stories of some of the people that you have helped. And but before we do, one question, because do you have any idea how many different, I don't know if we want to say VIPs, let's say guests, including VIPs, that you've helped in your career at Family Search? Like, could you throw out a number?
Well, we have hundreds that come through every year, and some of our groups may be a single individual, or 20 or 30 at one time that are coming. So there are currently anywhere from 150 to 300 guests that come every year to the library that we have the opportunity to help.
Okay.
And within that number, I would say in the last 4 years, they're coming from all over the world, that we've hosted guests from just about 80 different countries. So they're coming from all over. So that to me is exciting. That's probably one of the exciting things about my job, is getting to meet people from all over the world. You never know what you're going to get. You never know who may walk through those doors. And so it's always fresh. It's always different. It's always new. And that to me is exciting.
That is exciting. So is there like a common thread or something that no matter where they're from or what their family looks like, is there something that everyone wants to know or, is curious about?
Well, I would say a fair majority of the guests that we've helped, this is their first exposure to Family Search. They're curious about their family, maybe where they come from. They're looking for stories. They're just looking to make any type of connection they can. And I'm always amazed in some of these experiences, because while we do have a very large record set and collections from all over the world, we don't always have a robust collection, say from, somewhere in the Middle East or in Africa. And so sometimes everybody's experience is different, and you never know how that's going to turn out. Sometimes I think, oh, wow, we really don't have much to show. We only have this one record set. And then you end up finding one record of their family in this one record set, and they're just elated. They can't believe it. And they're so happy. And they take that printout and they're hugging it and they're thanking you. And it just really surprises me sometimes, thinking, well, this doesn't look like much of an experience, but it turns out to be something incredible and beautiful, and it's just fun to be a part of.
Oh, wow. Okay. I think this is something we've talked about with different guests, but just, we all want to have an understanding, of where we come from. And I think it helps us connect to the world and to ourselves. So thank you for that. Okay. So Jason, as we today are talking about your job, interacting with some VIP guests at FamilySearch that come to the Family History Library, what are some stories about people that you've helped that you can share? Because I know some of the stuff, right? Like you can't share their sensitivities around their histories. These aren't published anywhere, right?
Sure. Yeah, so we have kind of two aspects. We've got those that actually come to the library that we work with, and then we've got those that we do special projects for that senior church leaders may deliver. So as far as guests coming to the library, it really runs the gamut. We host a lot of political government leaders that come that may be in Salt Lake. We work a lot with military leaders, chaplains, business leaders. Occasionally we get celebrities, and we get athletes and other high-profile names that come to the library. So yeah, you never know what you're going to get. I would say, kind of thinking about some fun ones that we've had the opportunity to work with.
I was particularly interested in because they were part of Hamilton, which is, can you tell us that story? Is that one you can share?
Sure. That's been publicized. We had the opportunity when Hamilton was in Salt Lake touring. The cast and crew were given a list of things they could do while they were in Salt Lake City. And two of the cast members, Joseph Morales and Nick Walker, their main thing they wanted to do while they were in Salt Lake City was come to the Family History Library. And so we arranged for their visit for them to come and work one-on-one with a specialist. And I was fortunate. I got to be one of those specialists. I got to work with Nick. And we reached out beforehand knowing they were coming to see if they could provide us with a little information. For Nick, he didn't know much about his family. In fact, he knew nothing about his paternal side of his family, and then very little about his maternal. And so I was able to do a little bit of research beforehand so that we could share some things. It's probably one of my most favorite visits of all time, just because of how much that information meant to him. And I think that's probably one of the funnest things about the job is you get to share information with these folks that they don't know, and they start making connections. I remember one of the things that we shared with Nick was a photo of his father, and from a college yearbook. And I remember him taking the photo and showing others and say, "We look just alike. I can't believe this," And so that was so meaningful for him to see that picture and make that connection. But throughout the entire visit, he was just so excited as we shared information. We learned in that experience that some of his ancestors had been religious leaders in their communities and had ties to a particular church. And that meant a lot to him because that's part of their family. Faith is very important for them. So to see that this legacy of faith had been in the family for X number of generations was really cool. And what was great is we got back into the mid 1800s to see a number of his ancestors were educated, and that meant a lot to him. We looked at some school records, and to see that his ancestors had been afforded an education really touched his heart. And we found, I remember, an obituary of one of his, I think it was his second great grandfather, that just talked about the kind of man that he was and the respect that he had in the community among his people was just very admirable. And all these little details, he just soaked them all in and was just so thankful that we could share that, that he had an identity, that he had stories, that he knew of his past, and it lit a fire within him. And he was so thrilled to have that, and just his reaction was priceless to me. That was very memorable.
Oh wow, I loved when you shared that story before, and I think we can all relate to, having a moment where you see something that you haven't seen before tied to your family. And those of us, watching are pretty much enthusiasts, but I think it's also wonderful to be able to introduce that to others. And like you said, some people come and you don't have a lot to show them, but they appreciate, what you do show.
I'll just say this, I loved that visit. It was definitely a highlight, and it kind of got me in some hot water. Nick was just so generous, so gracious, wanted to provide me with tickets to go to Hamilton, offered to take us backstage. And I didn't want that experience to be tainted. That's not why we did it. That's not what it was about. For me, it was about that, getting to share something that was so valuable and seeing his reaction. So when family found out that I turned those things down, they were very upset that I would do that. But that to me today still is one of the highlights of my experiences, just for how well that was received and how much that meant. And that's one of the great things as specialists we get to do. We give people something they didn't know, they didn't have, and we expand their story. And being a part of that is so cool.
Oh, Jason, I think that's awesome. And everyone who is watching, if you have questions, let us know. We'll take questions in a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about, what about when you find things out about families that maybe were things they didn't know, and maybe they were skeletons. What do you do? And in that instance, and can you share a story of something that you helped someone with a colorful background?
Yeah. So every once in a while, we'll discover things that individuals may think aren't worth bringing to light, I guess. So that happens now and then. To me, it's part of the past. It's history. It happened, and while it may not be something that we necessarily relate with or advocate or anything like that, it happened. So I think some of these things can add a little bit of color to our family history, and sometimes they add a little bit of spice. Some people are maybe devastated to learn something. Others can take it for what it is. And I remember working with a guest at the library on one occasion where it just seemed like it was one thing after another, where we just kind of discovered these things that she didn't know. We learned through our research together that her grandmother had been convicted of attempted murder. And she couldn't believe this. She's like, I've never heard this story. And I grew up knowing my grandmother.
Wow. That would be a shocker.
It was. And it was a very colorful story about how things had happened. And she had shot a man. Fortunately, he didn't die. He had supposedly entered her bedroom without permission. But she was later, her sentence was commuted, so she never really did serve any time. And so this woman had grown up knowing her grandmother, but not knowing the story. And so I wasn't quite sure how she was going to take that. And she says, I just can't wait to share this with my family. Nobody knows this. This is incredible. This is so interesting. And from there, we looked at the next record and discovered that her grandfather had been thrown in jail for bootlegging. He had been arrested. And from there, we then go on to the next record, a newspaper record that shows that their dog bit the next door neighbor. It was just all these crazy little things. And she just soaked it up. She loved it, thought it was fun. That she says, this is my family. This makes sense. But she embraced it. Others may not be as receptive to some of that, but that one just definitely stands out because every corner we turned, it was just something new and kind of exciting, and there was a lot of laughs, and it turned out to be a very memorable visit.
So, like, as you help people from all over the world, and you and your team, and you kind of talked about the common thread of wanting to know who they are. Do you have like any research tricks or tips for uncovering the information? Like, what recommendations would you give people who are sort of starting from scratch or trying to help somebody? Obviously, the online consultation,
Yeah, definitely. We can take you from where you're at and give you recommendations and suggestions on where to go and what to do next. We can help you better understand the records that we have in our collection that are available online, as well as point you to collections that are out in the community. So no matter where you're starting, we can help. And right now it's through those virtual online consultations. I would say with the VIP research that we do for guests, we're often not provided with much information on these individuals. So we have to do a little digging. And so kind of bridging the gap between the present and when our records start can be a challenging experience. So FamilySearch has some resources, and one of those is kind of the public records set that's out there that can provide some information with an address, telephone number, even a birth date. That may be enough to get us started or to connect. So using those public record databases is very helpful. We often rely on newspapers, whether that's obituaries or marriage announcements, or other articles that provide clues and details about a person's family, so that we can put them in the right place, the right time, and then use the right record sets to try to extend some of the things that we know about them. Yearbooks can sometimes be very helpful if we know where they went to school and can find them in a yearbook. We can often glean enough details to put them into context. And I always get a kick out of pulling up people's old yearbook photos to share with them when they come and their guests. Some appreciate it more than others, but it's kind of a great way to illustrate the resources that we have at FamilySearch for preserving memories. So your documents, your photos, your stories. And I always tell them, well, this may be a photo that you want to preserve, maybe not, but FamilySearch provides you with a place where you can do that. We'll use social media platforms like Facebook. Sometimes you can gather enough clues to kind of put families together. And so those resources are very helpful if you're trying to bridge that gap between now and when our records start, to give you enough clues to get an ancestor, a parent or a grandparent to where you can start looking in census and vital records. And for the most part, we've been able to be pretty successful. Sometimes it takes a little more effort than others, but it's always nice when we can share something with a guest, a record, even if that's a census record, with them when they come, that connects them with their family.
How many, someone is asking, like, do you have an estimate on how many hours it typically takes to work on these projects? Or does it vary according to, how long does it take?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with a lot of the guests that we host, we don't have much time from the time that we find out they're coming to the time that they actually arrive. We may just spend just a couple hours just briefly researching and to see what we can come up with. The good majority of what we do is done while they're here, when we can start asking them questions and they can give us information. But it's always impressive as we're giving our presentations to highlight an ancestor, to share a little tidbit about their family and get them excited about doing the work. Now, if we're talking about some of the research projects that we do, then those kind of projects take several staff, months to put together. We can be talking 400, 500, 600, 700 hours on projects. And so those take a lot more time. So we don't do as many of those as we do actually hosting our guests.
There's
usually
the extensive research projects that one of the senior leadership within will deliver, and then there's the people that come. Can you tell us about any of the big projects that you've participated in, if they're public record?
Yeah, so there's been a few that have been published over the last couple of years on different news media outlets. Recently, senior church leaders met with Governor Brad Little of Idaho. We did another. We provided a framed pedigree of his ancestors. Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland also met with church leaders, and we did some family history there. Some more higher prominent folks would be folks like Prime Minister Theresa May, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, President Rebelo de Sousa of Portugal. So those kind of projects we do on a more limited basis.
But you only do so many with that, like that. So it's interesting because you said from a couple of hours when people come, and then hundreds of hours for these larger projects.
Yeah.
And so a question that I think is interesting is, like, have you had a particular story that you've either helped someone uncover, or your own sort of ancestor story that has really impacted you?
I was thinking about an experience that we had within the last couple of years. We hosted a gal, Dr. Martha Dreisnack, who is with the Oregon Health and Sciences University. And she's done a lot of research about family stories and the impact stories can have on our children in particular. And that visit was very memorable for me as we talked about family history and how that can strengthen and benefit families. Her work showed that children who know their family history, who know their family stories, are more resilient. They're better able to deal with some of the life's challenges that are thrown at them, and they seem to do better. And to me, that information was very motivating for me to start telling our family stories and to do a better job of recording my stories, as well as sharing the stories of ancestors that I've researched with my kids. I can say that I hadn't done a superb job of passing along that information, but since that time, I have recorded a number of stories and shared a lot of these tidbits of history with my kids, and it's changed the way that I do family history now. I really love the stories and what it can do, and my kids love them, and I can actually keep their attention.
Right, stories. We love family stories. Okay, so is there what is their favorite story? Do they ask you to retell a certain story over and over again?
One of the stories that I think really means a lot to me, and I've told my kids on multiple occasions, has to do with my great grandfather and my great-great-grandfather on my Harrison side, they were immigrants from England. They came to the United States in 1904 and 1905. My Harrisons come from a long line of coal miners, and they immigrated to the United States and settled here in Utah and continued the occupation of coal mining. And one that's really hard, dangerous work. And a number of my ancestors have suffered either health effects from working in the mines or have been killed in mining disasters. So telling this story is the stories of my Harrison coal miner ancestors has strengthened my appreciation for what I have today. So my father was really the first in like 7-8 generations of Harrison ancestors to actually kind of break the chain. After he graduated high school, he went into the military, later became an electrician. And that changed the course of our future. But his father was a coal miner who died at an early age from black lung disease. But my great-great-grandfather was actually killed in the 1924 Castlegate mine explosion, which at the time was probably the third most deadliest mine accident in the United States. Killed 171 men. Everyone that was in the mine was killed, and one rescue worker. And it was horrific. And not only did it take my second great-grandfather, but it took two of his sons, who had wives, and each had a young child, and it left 3 widows. I'm fortunate in that my great-grandfather had left that particular mine a short time before and was working in another mine. It may have claimed his life. Another son had worked the night shift and was not in the mine at the time that it exploded. And so those were just horrific times. And so I have a greater appreciation for the blessings and privileges I've had. They lived in small coal mining camps under harsh conditions. Just a lot of gratitude and appreciation. I appreciate their sacrifices and their hard work and effort. Those stories, one, connect us to our ancestors, but also then motivate us and give us the strength to deal with our own challenges. And I just found that particular story in and of itself has inspired me in so many ways that I'm grateful to have learned all that I've learned about these ancestors, because it's given me such a different perspective and appreciation that I think has really been a blessing in my life.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I know that that people are, here with you and appreciative of that. And I think, I'm sure all of us have stories of, loss and hardship. And I think, how are we not only trying to understand and learn from that, but how are we sharing and documenting our own, trials and struggles? So is that something you're doing? And you talked about recording your story. Like, how are you sort of leaving behind, I don't want to say legacy, but remembering the good and the hard?
Yeah. I was just thinking about an experience that my wife and I had. We've had 6 children. 4 of our children are still living, but we've lost a couple of children along the way. And one of the things that family history has done for us is it's brought some healing, especially so for my wife as we've gone through these experiences. And one of the things that we learned when we lost our first child, and we're going through that experiences, was that my wife's grandmother had gone through a similar experience. And my wife didn't know about this experience, and she was very close to her grandmother, and has felt this connection with her, even though she has long since passed away. And so as we're going through this experience and we're learning about her grandmother, it kind of took my wife's attention away from what she was feeling. I want to know more about grandma, what she went through. And we made some incredible connections as we started to explore and learn more about this child that she had lost. We learned that it was their very first child, and the child was full term and had died during the delivery process due to some negligence and other factors. And the experience nearly claimed the life of her grandmother. And she wasn't able to attend the funeral services for the child because she was fighting for her life. We learned that this child had been buried in a neighboring town cemetery. They didn't have the means to bury their own child, and a family member gave them a plot in another cemetery. We learned that the child had been buried, but without a marker ever placed on the grave. And as my wife's learning these details, there's just something inside her is like, we've got to fix this. Her grandmother had always lamented the fact that they'd never placed a marker on the grave. In fact, as we interviewed family members, nobody knew where the grave was. And through some records at FamilySearch, we identified the cemetery where this child was buried. And we also discovered a book that had been kept by her grandmother of some keepsakes of photos and cards and newspaper clippings from that experience. In fact, an interesting story behind that is this particular book, nobody really knew what it was for or who it was for. It had actually been put in a box of things to be discarded because nobody wanted it. And we rescued it. And this book had a photo of the child. It had a photo of the casket. It had a photo of the cemetery. And one of the key things that we found was a picture of the casket sitting in the cemetery next to a couple markers. And you could see the mountains in the background. And so knowing where the cemetery was, we were able to take this photo and we were able to hold it up and walk around, and we were able to find where that child had been buried. We were able to work with family to get a marker put on the grave, and it became this very just healing experience. It helped us to not focus on our pain, but it helped us connect with those of the past by serving them and doing something that they could not do. That was very healing for us. And it was just a beautiful experience. And I never would have guessed that family history was going to help me through one of the toughest times of my life, but it did, and equally so for my wife.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think, we're having a lot of appreciation for you and the experience that you had. And I think many people have found a way to sort of be lifted by connecting with and serving almost, this have gone before. So that's a beautiful, example of that, Jason. So thank you.
Sure.
And I think that the idea of our story and documenting all parts of our story, and doesn't need to be for everybody, right? Like we're not saying you need to, but I think there's a lot of healing in the process of documenting, right? In fact, I have a book and it talks about like writing as a way to process trauma. And so there's so many things that you can learn from understanding those who have come before and then connecting to their story as you are. I mean, we're living our story right now. So as we're getting ready to sort of wrap things up, I just want to know if what is a message that you would share with those of us, those who are watching, as someone who gets to interact with people from 80 different countries and all walks of life, and you've seen their experience when they see a photo of their dad in the yearbook. And what encourage us, give us, give us a good reminder about why this matters.
Well, I would say that my big tip was to get beyond yourself. Don't keep all of these great discoveries that you're making to yourself. Share them. There's just so much joy to experience. Like I mentioned, sharing them with family has extended multiple blessings to my children and connected us in unique ways, and has provided us with some great family experiences as we've taken the time to do that. From the library's perspective, the thing that I enjoy most is working with guests and sharing this information. So if you want to experience some joy, some great happiness, get beyond yourself, look to help others, share what you know, use your talents and skills that you've acquired doing your own family research to encourage somebody else, or maybe you look into the family history of a neighbor and you share what you find. To me, that is some of the most rewarding experiences I've had, is just getting to share something with others, and we can all do that. So record your stories, make them available, whether that's using FamilySearch and uploading those stories to the memories, or sending them off via an email, or posting them on Facebook. Just let others know what you know and experience what you've experienced, and you'll find that there's great joy that comes in doing that.
Oh, Jason, that was beautiful and lovely. Thank you for spending this afternoon with us, and thank you to all of our loyal viewers. We love welcoming you here each Wednesday afternoon, and we appreciate people like Jason joining and sharing and encouraging us.